Welcome back to One Hit Wonderland, where we take a look at bands and artists known for only one song. Folks, mid-90s alternative rock was weird.
In the time of chimpanzees, I was a monkey.
You know how I complain that modern rock all sounds like commercials these days? Well, that was absolutely not true in the 90s.
'Cause he's going the distance.
Go back and pretend you don't know these songs, they will sound like the absolute weirdest thing you ever heard. And for every song that became an accepted rock standard, there's 6 more that faded out of memory. The mid-90s bizarro alt-rock novelty song was one of the greatest, strangest trends of that decade. Too weird to live, too rare to kill, as they say.
Mark you got with Sharon.
Which brings us to a little band with the charming little name of the Butthole Surfers. Yes, the Butthole Surfers. Presumably they surfed buttholes, but they might have been buttholes who surfed. It's all up to interpretation. The point is, they were called the Butthole Surfers, and the Butthole Surfers did not give a fuck what you thought. They were the most abrasive, most uncommercial band in history. They wrote songs like I Saw an X-Ray of a Girl Passing Gas and The Revenge of Anus Presley. The idea that these guys would have even one hit is absolutely nuts.
I don't mind the sun sometimes, the images it shows.
But all of a sudden it was 1996, and the Butthole Surfers were actually on the radio. They hit it big. They were mainstream. Everyone loved the Butthole Surfers.
I'm a surfer!
Their single Pepper was a bona fide hit. It was tearing up the charts, which must have been awkward for the poor DJs who had to make an anal sex reference just to tell listeners who the song was from. I've heard anecdotes of Casey Kasem having to call them the BH Surfers or something like that. So here we are. Even by the standards of 90s rock, these guys were pretty out there. How on earth did the Butthole Surfers get on the radio? Well, we're gonna find out. And we're gonna say the word butthole a lot, so get used to it. Butthole!
All in love with dying, they were drinking from a fountain that was pouring like an avalanche coming down the mountain.
It is difficult for me to condense the long and storied career of underground legends like the Surfers into a few short minutes. But here's my best shot at trying to accurately convey what the band was about. That's them at Lollapalooza trashing their trailer. No, excuse me, they're not trashing the trailer. That's actually 9 Inch Nails' trailer. See, this is why Trent Reznor always sounds so angry and depressed all the time. Texas nutjobs keep smashing up his shit. The Butthole Surfers are lead singer Gibby Haynes, guitarist Paul Leary, drummer King Coffey, and bassist Jeff Pincus. Now there have been a lot of switches over the years, but that's the most stable lineup. Plus a lot of the time there was a second drummer, Teresa Nervoso. And the fact that they had 2 drummers is a good indication of their sound, I think. They're from San Antonio, and I think they were the ones who originally made Austin weird, from about 80 miles away. Anyway, what kind of band were they? They were a noise rock, psychedelic, alternative, experimental rock punk band. Which meant they did whatever the hell they wanted as long as it was loud and abrasive and abused the senses. Occasionally they would write actual songs, other times they just fart around and make noise. Gibby Haynes had this entire insane sound setup to distort his voice into, well, this. And a bunch of their songs are piss takes on classic rock.
Satan! Satan! Satan!
For example, here's a tuneless piece of noise that occasionally uses the riff from Black Sabbath's Sweet Leaf. It's called Sweat Loaf. Oh, and here's a cover they did of Donovan's Hurdy Gurdy Man. That seems like a good song for them to cover, right? You know, there's a lot of fuzz guitar and weird vocal effects. Ha, no. No, they just turned it into a joke. They turn up the echo to 11 because they're the Butthole Surfer and they don't need your corny 60s shit. Although they did have this in common with the 60s, they were on drugs most of the time. Look, I know this is one hit Wonderland, but the Butthole Surfers were known for a lot more than one hit to a lot of people. I'm only covering them because my title card artist has been begging me to do it for years. Hi, Kryn. But yeah, there was a lot of love for these guys. Their third album, Locust Abortion Technician, is considered one of the great noise rock albums. For many years, they were known as your favorite band's favorite band. Like, if you were in the know, you knew them. Plus, there were all these crazy stories about them floating around, like how they stalked REM or were having sex on stage. I mean, I was just browsing through old YouTube videos of the concerts, and bam, look at that. Yep, that's Gibby's dick waving right at me. Someone just uploaded that to YouTube. It's still right there. You can find it right now. Alright, so you get the idea, right? A band like that, they're always going to remain under the radar. Absolutely nothing was going to break these guys through. Oh, right. Man, it's nice to be covering a band on Wonderland who was launched by Nirvana rather than ended. No, the Butthole Surfers were apparently one of Kurt Cobain's favorite bands. So the Surfers got a major record deal. Just like every band that Kurt Cobain liked. He'd say, oh, you know, I like that Meat Puppets. And suddenly every record executive was like, sign the Meat Puppets! The Meat Puppets are a license to print money, baby! They're gonna be the next Rolling Stones, I tell ya!
We're the Butthole Surfers!
So they started to get more airplay, and by which I mean they'd be on MTV late at night, and they'd play some of the big festivals like Lollapalooza. I'm not sure that translates to success, but, you know, it's something. They had a lot of powerful friends. You know, John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin produced their whole album. And see, that's Flea there in one of their videos. Their lead singer was the guy blabbering gibberish in Ministry's Jesus Built My Hot Rod. I love that song, and I literally just learned that. But this was all just build-up. A build-up to their breakthrough. A time when the Butthole Surfers would be the biggest band on the planet. Butthole Mania, they called it. They got a fluke radio single that got a little airplay.
I'm Kurt Loder with MTV News. After 15 years of semi-underground renown, Austin's Butthole Surfers have scored a commercial hit with their single Pepper.
So here we are, 1996. The Butthole Surfers released their second major label record, Electric Larryland. You get it? It's like Hendrix's Electric Ladyland, except it's Larry. Because Larry is just an inherently funny name, as of course is the Butthole Surfers.
It's called Electric Larryland. Please welcome, making their network TV debut, Butthole Surfers. Kids!
Marky got with Sharon, and Sharon got Cherie, and she was sharing Sharon's outlook on the topic of disease.
Anyway, the name of the song is Pepper. And Pepper is a song about young people with a death wish.
Some will die in hot pursuit and fiery auto crashes.
You get a handful of descriptions of the people and how they died, or came close to death at least.
Tommy played piano like a kid out in the rain, and then he lost his leg in Dallas. He was dancing with the train. They
all kind of seem like useless dumbasses.
Mikey had a facial scar, and Bobby was a racist. They were all in love with dying. They were doing it in Texas.
And some of them kind of need to die.
And then there was the ever-present football player rapist.
So why this? Why Pepper? Why, after 15 years of not trying, did the Butthole Surfers suddenly reach the mainstream? Well, I can kind of see it. Compared to their earlier stuff, Pepper is a lot more tuneful.
I don't mind the sun sometimes, the images it shows.
It has a real chorus with a good solid hook around it. The half-mumbled lyrics are kind of weird, but we were pretty okay with that in '96. Beck had primed the pump for that. In fact, they were accused of ripping off Beck at the time.
I don't really understand how sampling turns you into Beck.
Which honestly, if anything, Beck ripped them off. They've been doing it a lot longer than Beck. Although, that is the Surfers playing the chorus backwards there. Just like they do on Loser. I don't know. Maybe they weren't so resistant to trends as they seemed.
Another Mikey took a knife while arguing in traffic.
But, you know, this song is still pretty out there, right? Like, for example, the name of the song. Pepper? Where does that come from? What in the song does it relate to? And the answer is, who the hell knows? Probably nothing. And the verses don't seem to have a thing to do with the chorus either. You never know just how you look through other people's eyes. Yeah, that's nice. Did you say something about a rapist earlier? And it's certainly not a coherent narrative.
Flipper died a natural death. He caught a nasty virus. Ollie caught a bullet, but it only hit his leg.
I mean, who are these people? Why do they want to die? Do they even know each other? Like, are they friends? Do they all die? Do they live? I would like to hear how the football player rapist died. You can share that one. So what made this song big exactly? just saying, well, the 90s was weird, I don't think that covers it. I think there's a more specific thing going on. Now, I'm just going off my vague recollections of my childhood here, but in the 90s, we kind of had this sort of cultural obsession with stupidity. You know how millennials get all sorts of shit for being lazy and entitled and oversensitive snowflakes and so on and so on? Well, buck up, millennials. You got it better than the Gen Xers, whose stereotype was that they were all just complete fucking morons, with their stupid goatees and lip piercings and brain-rotting music. Yeah, this was the decade we coined the word duh. Yeah, Kurt Cobain felt stupid and contagious, and that was the tag that the entire decade got stuck with. They're just stupid to the point of disease.
Then he lost his leg in Dallas. He was dancing with the train. They were
a song about a bunch of drooling, brain-dead idiots from a band whose name indicated that they were also probably brain-dead idiots. I think that hit a nerve. That hit the zeitgeist. It was what we were about in 1996.
They were all in love with dying, and they were doing it in Texas.
This was the slacker generation, too stupid to even know that you're not supposed to go die. You're supposed to try to not die, you dum-dums. But all the same, there's also like this kind of romance to it,
Some will fall in love with life and drink it from a fountain that is pouring like an avalanche coming down the mountain.
This is like the 90s version of the rebels and the outlaws. People who live fast and die young. So there's almost like this classic rock feel to it. Reminds me a lot of Steve Miller's Take the Money and Run. Another story of ne'er-do-wells flirting with death in the Southwest. Now, to be clear, Pepper was not actually that big. It hit the top 20 on the rock charts, scraped into the top 40 in radio airplay. That's not humongous. I think it might have seemed bigger at the time because once you hear of a band called the Butthole Surfers being played on the radio, you never forget it. Except we kinda did.
We are the Butthole Surfers, and this next song, it's called The Jingle of a Dog's Collar, and it goes like this.
This was the only other single off that album, Jingle of a Dog's Collar. I don't know why they picked this one as the single. I think possibly just because it's their mellowest and least abrasive. If your choice is, this song or some of their older work. Yeah, I can see why they went with the first one.
I was looking for the main line and I was working through a friend of mine, but
Yeah, he's doing a decent Lou Reed impression at least. And what's it about?
jingle of a dog's collar would be good right here. The jingle of a dog's collar would be fine.
What do you mean, like in the song? Like it would make good instrumentation? But you can add that in.
Jingle of a dog's collar would be good right here.
I'm not sure it's really adding anything musically. But you are right that a jingle of a dog's collar is always a welcome sound, assuming there's a dog at the end of it. Always a good time for a dog to come jump on you. Isn't that right, puppy? Mwah, mwah. Who's a butthole sniffer? Oh, who's a good puppy? To be honest, I've really grown to like this song. It's got a very Pixies-ish vibe to it, but there's no real strong hook that I think would catch on. It's not a radio single, it's more like a B-side. Even by mid-90s standards, I think this might be a little too avant-garde for rock radio. It's still by far the most successful of their albums, though, but it didn't really translate into a lasting fan base. I used to do all my music shopping in the used section, and I guarantee for 10 years after that album came out, you could find like 10 copies of Electric Larryland in every used CD rack. The mainstream had one taste of Butthole, and they decided they didn't like it. Yeah, they did have one other song you might maybe recognize, The Shame of Life.
I love the girls and the money and the shame of life.
It took them 5 more years to release another album after Pepper because of the lawsuits and shit. But they did get a little bit of airplay off of their lead single, Shame of Life. It was on a bunch of soundtracks, had a tiny bit of radio play, and this is the one I always really liked by them. Which is funny because when I was doing the research for this episode, I found out that I'm pretty sure they hate it. Money and girls. That's just basic. What are we, Motley Crue over here? I mean, you can fairly call this selling out. Why would a band like the Butthole Surfers write something like this? Well, surprise, the Surfers didn't write it. Guess who did? Guess.
devil without a cause. And I'm back with the beaver hats and Ben Davis slacks. 30
Yeah, no kidding. Apparently Kid Rock, at the height of his fame, wanted to sample one of their songs, and they let him repay them by having him write the chorus for their big radio single. And this is what he came up with, The Shame of Life. The Surfers said they were, quote, horrified because it was, quote, so, well, bad. But they worked with it and came up with something about crack-smoking squirrels to try and make it fit.
And there were girls petting squirrels, and there were squirrels smoking crack with the no.
I don't know, I really liked it. And after that, no, nothing. They've never released another album since. They've toured a few times, but no new music. But last year they started kicking around maybe making something new after a 16-year hiatus. I mean, why not? The members of this band are 60 years old now, but if they still got it, sure. Did they deserve better? You know, you ask that question like they wanted better. They demonstrably did not. I think one hit was pretty much all the hit they needed. If they wanted more success, they'd have picked a different name. They weren't trying to have hits, they made the music they wanted, and they are legends because of it. And in between their weird career, there was this one brief hit that happened as one last troll of a joke that hit like an avalanche coming down the mountain. Did they deserve better? Fuck you!